Peter Vundla, I'd like to reflect now on some of the brands that you worked on the time. Omo.
Yes.
That famous line, "I almost died."
I nearly died.
I
yeah.
nearly died.
Yeah.
And also the change from Charles Glass into a different type of advertising for an iconic South African beer.
Indeed, yeah. Well, I worked on Omo for many years, and like I said in my book, until the foam started coming out of my ears. And it was the big South African brand. I mean, to the point that we used to run these double-page spreads in the Sunday Times.
So you did, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it dominated outdoor, it dominated radio, television. It was the big South African brand, such as you don't see today, actually. And then the other one was the Castle Lager one. Yeah, I worked on Castle Lager for a number of years, and Charles Glass was the vehicle. And I do mention in my book that actually we knew that it wasn't actually Charles Glass who was the master brewer. It was actually his wife. And but this was like a corridor secret, you know, in the agency.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And I worked on that brand for some 5-6 years. It was also the leading brand at the time. I think it had some 32% market share. And it gradually shifted from Charles Glass then to lifestyle advertising. And South African brewers actually must be complimented for having introduced multiracial advertising in this country. And later then women were introduced in this lifestyle advertising. I think what South African breweries did was to do what I call aspirational advertising, in terms of reflecting society the way it should be or it could be, rather than the way society is. And I like that very much, and I was happy to be part of that the trend, which I thought would lead to greater cohesion, you know, in our country.
So at this point, I would imagine that you're established, you're fairly comfortable, but you're also tasked at this point with working with two young men, Happy Nchingila and Demapi Seranyani, and your world was about to change. This was the start of going out and doing something on your own. How did you come to meet these other two people who also have become part of the firmament of South African advertising history?
Yeah, well, I had this lonely job at Ogilvy and Mather where I was the only black person in client service. And there were others, obviously, in black communications and in strategic planning. Demapi was the first to join me in client service. And then later came Happy Nchingila, who came, I think he came from Lipton's or one of those. And so there were 3 of us then in client service, a few others joined us, and then we started plotting, you know, the establishment of Herdbuoys.
Was it really plotting?
It was plotting because we used Radford's time and sometimes material, you know, to plot this agency. And of course we met with people such as Eric Mafuna, Ruel Khoza, Gary Morolo, Horace Mpanza, Madala Mpahlele, Alfin Galaloma, and so on. You know, the very few.
One of those colleagues said to you that there was a dearth of black executives and it was time to take the plunge.
Indeed, that was Eric, and that was the rationale behind Herdbuoys. We felt there was a dearth of black talent in established agencies, and what we needed to do was to divest the established white agencies of what little black talent they had, and thus Herdbuoys was born, and that would obviously give us a competitive advantage in terms of understanding what was now this burgeoning black market.
Ogilvy wasn't pleased.
Of course, they were not pleased. I remember my boss, Bob Bradford, kind of cynically saying, "If you guys fail, you must come back," you know, and actually even called our envisaged agency an apartheid agency, which was rather sad, and of course that wasn't a fact. And but then we met him down the line, and he was quite, I think, complimentary of what we had started. Yeah.
Interesting, though, you had a business, but you had no startup capital.
Yeah, we actually funded Herdbuoys out of our own pockets, and for some months on end we went without salaries. And the salaries were based on one's end of the month obligations, you know, the school fees or the car installment and so on. And we went to established agencies seeking finance. We went to wealthy individuals. We went to Soweto doctors, who at the time moneyed people, and no luck. And so we started kind of doing all sorts of things which we call advertising. We were into promotions. We were into event management, you know, just to pay the lights at the end of the month. We were never funded by anybody except, you know, out of this sacrifice.
Reflecting back on those early days, what's the big business lesson that you learned out of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, one needs to. I don't think there are really stock answers, to that kind of question, Jeremy. But one just needs to take the plunge. You must be ready to sacrifice. You must give up a lot and set your sights down a bit in terms of expectations. And maybe it's a bit easier today, given that we have Black economic empowerment and various funding agencies, which were not available to us at the time. You must recall Herdbuoys was started pre-independence and pre-BEE and those kinds of things. And so it's really for young people to be prepared to, to feel the pain. There's no easy route to
feel the pain. I understand that,
Yeah.
Peter, but also you have to maintain an entrepreneurial spirit. You've got to be bulletproof. In fact, you say in the book you wanted to change the world. It's
Indeed.
this inherent self-belief in your own future success.
Exactly. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think with young people today, it's they want to take the easy route. They don't want to go the whole gamut in terms of creating some kind of track record.
Yeah.
There has to be some competitive edge that will kind of spur you on and ensure that you succeed.
The name Herdbuoys was misspelt by design.
Indeed.
Tell me the story.
Yeah, actually it was one of 14 names, Jeremy. And the initial spelling was Herdboys, because that's how we cynically said our white colleagues perceived us, which are mere head boys, And but then we thought, being boys, Boys, maybe we should do a bit of misspelling, with tongue in cheek, And then we said we would spell it Herd, that we would herd our clients to those all-important consumers, and conversely herd those consumers to our clients. And then boys was spelled, as Americans say, buoys, which is a counseling type position, just a guide. I remember people such as Ronnie Castros, for example. He would meet at the airport. I don't think he ever knew my name, but every time he seems like, Herdbuoys, Herdbuoys,
So which is great advertising in itself for the agency.
Yeah.
More with Peter Vundla and his book Doing Time, when Mags on Media continues.
News that moves. ENCA.com.